Hi guys, I'm so glad that you watched the first part 1 of painting a pink peony or peony, and I hope it worked out well for you. I hope that you will enjoy part 2, and this will be painting more of the background. So let's get started, and don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Catch you in a few. Bye. Okay, we're dry. So now we can do something else. So I'm going to go to a little bit smaller brush, still using my green, and I'm going to do putting in some negative painting, negative petals. So I can start, let's see, do I have any up here that I want to put in? Sure. In my photo, I've got a white fence behind there. So I'll paint in one petal. Something that I watch for as I'm doing these is, it's called putting in a tangent. So if you've got one leaf like this is coming out and this is coming out here, if I make this line follow this line, this is a petal and this is a leaf, that line then becomes a tangent. Or this line on this line becomes a tangent, and you don't want those, so you need to move those lines so that they aren't directly in line with each other. A lot of relatively new artists, and I've done it myself, will make that mishap, and it plays tricks with our eyes, and it's not pretty. It tends to make your eye follow that line, and in this case it would lead you right off the paper. And I don't want you to go off the paper, I want you to stay on my painting. So something that you can do as you're doing these, now that I've got that leaf in there, I can pull out some of that color so that one side's darker than the other. Got a little dark edge there. There's my center of the petal. And the one thing that peonies are known for on their leaves is a little tiny bit of red in the tips. So I'm just going to let a little bit of red in there. Didn't get very much. I'm just kind of let that flow in there, gives it a kind of another color. Doesn't have to be everywhere. And then as I'm painting the flowers, I'll actually put a little bit of green on the flowers with the red on the leaves, and it just kind of unifies everything as you're doing it. Gives it a little bit different look, but it brings them all together as well. And I'm doing this while it's still wet, so it'll bleed down into the rest of it a little bit. And since this is behind the flowers, and I want this petal to be underneath this petal, I'm going to darken up this a little bit, still using that green that's on my palette of whatever color it happens to be at the moment. That puts that under that leaf a little bit and under that a little bit. And I want this to be behind the flower, the petal, so I can darken this up a little. And that puts that underneath there. This granulated area, I think I'm going to make it a dark petal. Not petal, leaf. So I don't particularly like that granulated area there. So I talked about negative painting, and I'm not really at that point where I'm doing negative painting yet. I'm going to prepare for it. As soon as these two dry, then I can go back in and I can put additional leaves in there that make it look like they're receding back in, and I can keep going darker and darker and darker, or I can pull out and go lighter and lighter and lighter, bring those forward or push them back. Ooh, that's nice dark. Ooh, that one's nice. Love that. That one will be way back in there. Maybe a little red up there in that edge. Might not show too much. Do I want to put a vein in there? Sure, why not? The veins in these particular ones, some of them tend to be lighter veins. So what you can do is have a damp brush and you can go in and lift out next to where you just put in a darker vein. It's a little bit too dry. And lift out some of the color, and that puts in a vein. Emphasis on the leaves so much, as I want just a light feeling that that's a leaf. I'm going to take and put a little bit of yellow on this one to make this one stand out a little bit more. You can make that leaf dip down a little bit. Go a little bit darker. Put another dark leaf in there. And we'll go push it way back. So it'll be really dark. And then we'll pop those forward a little bit. See how I went on either side of that little point? That's so I don't have one of those tangents in there. So I'll come down to where these real leaves are, because those are fake leaves. Come down here and make those a little bit lighter green. So I will use Hansa Yellow Light. Careful, I will have one of those outlined edges up along the petals. So, and I've got a little bit pooling of water here, so I'm just going to suck some of that out. And to do that, just dry my brush off. Works like a sponge. And sucks that out. I can let that dry. And then I can, something up here. This up. It's wet, so I can still keep working on it. That's why I like working wet and wet, because then I don't have hard edges. My colors can mix on my paper without having to mix in my palette so much. My palette's beginning to look a little messy, but last night I went through and rejuvenated all of my colors on the sides here in the wells. And what I do is I'll squirt a real technical term, a gob of paint in the well. And rather just letting that gob of paint sit there and then spray it each time, I don't like the way that it turns out. So what I'll do is I'll put that, another technical term, gob of paint in there. I'll put a little bit of water in there, and then I will mix it up really good, not so that it's runny or everything, but just so that it mixes it up and it keeps it staying nicer, longer. It doesn't get crumbly. When I mix my paints up, or I spray them every day to keep them soft, I use distilled water. Distilled water will help deter the paints from becoming or having mildew on them or mold. And so I always just use distilled water to spray my paints. Of course, when I'm making up the colors, I don't. I just use regular tap water. But since I've started doing that, I rarely ever get mold in my paints. Just another something that I learned along the way. So a minute ago I lifted this area out. I'm going to put dark in there. And I'm doing it around the edge of that, thinking ahead. That's going to be like a leaf there. Negative painting, because I'm painting around the area that I want it to be. That becomes a leaf. If I paint the other side of that, see, my leaf, easy peasy leaf. When I say negative painting, you paint around what you want the object to be. And sometimes that's not very easy. But painting around something makes it become, depending on what you're going for, makes it become a leaf, a petal, some kind of object. I just looked outside and it's snowing again. longing for spring, really longing for spring. So I'm just going in and making these background darker so that my leaves will pop out a little bit more. See, I haven't done anything with the flower yet. If I get my darkest area in there first, then I know how dark to make my flower. I may have to go back in and adjust it a little bit, but not a lot. I may have to darken up a couple of places in here, but by getting in my dark values early on, gives me a better idea, for lack of a better word, of how dark I want the center dark areas of my flower. Once I get the flower in, then I can look at my background and go, that wasn't quite as dark as what it should have been. I need to go darker on that. So then I can go back in and darken up just a few areas, not having to do the whole thing all over again. So I'm going to bring this up closer to you. As I'm painting and things are drying, see how that came onto that leaf? I actually quite like that. I think that's pretty, and I'll worry about it later. But I can see almost another leaf taking shape in here. So I can enhance that little dry spot right there. I don't know whether you can see that. I can enhance that by painting like that, and that gives me, like this is another leaf that's underneath this one. So if I want that leaf there to be under this leaf and this leaf, then I can paint on either side of that, like that. That kind of says another leaf. So then what I would do is come back in here, paint this dark, and if it's the same darkness as that, maybe a little tiny shade different. So, because this is leaking into this, and I don't hate that, it's not my favorite, I can smooth that out before it dries really hard. If I want this leaf to be a little bit lighter out here on the edge, I just lift out some color. Can darken this up a little bit more. This leaf that I was working down here on, I am going to take a little bit of quinacridone gold and paint on this because I don't like the color of that. When you have a green that is kind of ugly, it's too harsh, it's too fake looking, take a little bit of quinacridone gold and paint over it, and it brightens it up and makes it look much prettier. I do that a lot. That's why I love having quinacridone gold in my palette. So far, I've only used Prussian blue and quinacridone gold for all of this background. I used a little bit of indigo. That was over here on this edge. You can also take and if you want to change your background a little bit so that it shows up a little bit more, that leaf that kind of decided was there, just wet a little bit. Wow. And then I can change the color just a little bit so that it's a different color green. I hope you're not bored watching every little step. But I've had so many people say, well, they don't like to see it all speeded up because then they lose what I've done. So you can speed this up as much as you want. If you go to the bottom of where the picture is, where you're seeing the video, there's a little round wheel, and on that round wheel gives you different settings. If you click on that, it will tell you at what speed you're watching this video. I'm doing this in normal speed. If you want to speed it up to get to the end faster, you can click on one of those speeds. It will make me talk funny, so you will lose that. But you can also just skip ahead if you'd like to do that. And hope that works for you. I try to please everybody, but I can't please everybody all the time. Only some of the people, some of the time, right? So, anyway, you can try that. And if you don't need to listen to me talking constantly, that's great. And if you want to hear me the whole time, that's awesome too. Smoothing that out just a little bit. And I think probably what I'll do next is go to the flower. I've got this side done. That gives me a basis for how deep I need to go on my flower. And I can come back in and do this later. Like if I get bored on this, then I could go back to this. Like I'm bored on this. It's okay to jump around, but I really wanted to get as much of my dark values in here as possible so that I know how dark or how light, excuse me, to go on this. So since I'm going to start on this, I'm also going to change my water so that I'm working with clean water, because my water is just a little bit dirty. So I'll put you on pause and I'll be back in a minute. So I thought while I was changing my water, I'd show you what my water container looks like without water in it. It is a ice cream container that is called Talenti, and it's gelato. It's the best ice cream ever. So I started using these containers because I've got a bottom to it, or a lid to it. I can set this, it just keeps it a little bit more stable so I perchance don't tip it over. But then I was in the store one day and I saw this makeup cleaner. It's what you wash your makeup brushes on. It's rubberized and really soft, and it's got all these different little nubs on it. So it has a suction cup on the bottom of it, so I can just take it and stick it down in this, and then I can dip my brush down in there and clean it off real quick. And then I've got, along with that, I've got these glass beads that I put in the bottom of the container so that I can swish it up so I don't have to clean it out and take this out every time I fill it up with new water. These beads just chase around the bottom and clean the bottom off for me, and makes it really easy. So I can just go like this, those little beads go around and around and around, and it cleans the bottom, and I can tip it upside down and then it cleans the underneath side of this little plastic rubberized thing. And then I put water in it and I'm good to go. So I'll be right back till I get the water, which is very convenient. It's in my studio, I have a sink, so I don't have to go too far to get my water. And now the light has changed in my art room a little bit, so I need to, because I've got a window that's right here and that I sit in front of so I can look out at the view. I've got a lake out there, and today it's supposed to be spring, but it's not really. It's snowed. We had probably 3 inches of snow out there this morning that I didn't know we were going to get. So my light keeps changing as clouds move past. Although I've got lighting, it still changes. Okay, so we're going to go back to the flower.